Hi, everybody. Meteorologist Joe Cioffi here on this day after Thanksgiving, which is a beautiful day here in the Northeast and in the Mid-Atlantic states. And actually, through much of the country, the weather today is fairly quiet and tranquil. Let me start off by saying I hope everybody had an absolutely terrific Thanksgiving. I know I did. I had it actually on Wednesday and did not have too much going on yesterday. We did it a day early for logistical reasons, but it was terrific. The food was great. I cooked probably the best turkey I've cooked in a long, long time. I actually do pretty well with roasting turkeys with a veal sausage stuffing and sweet potato biscuits, which came out to be spectacular, and all sorts of other goodies. So I hope, again, everybody had a great Thanksgiving. Now we're going to be looking at a rather at least for the standpoint of the weather pattern in the eastern part of the United States, we're going to be taking a nap. It was one of the reasons why I didn't live stream yesterday. I had some technical issues, but I could have overcome those. But I decided that since the weather wasn't really all that active and everybody was having a great day, just take an extra day off on both sides of the equation. And now we'll look at the weather going forward. I actually want to start today with what's going to be going on in Europe, because this is one of the reasons why our weather is going to be so quiet. And, we've been talking about this blocking pattern that has set up, but, with these blocking patterns, as we've, made the point several times, the block is no guarantee of anything. And where the block is, how strong it is, makes all the difference in the world in terms of the weather you're going to get from it. And this is a perfect example of it. The weather for this block is going to the impact is going to be felt across much of Europe. The block that we have in the Atlantic is to the east, what we would call an east-based block, where it's along and east of Greenland. And as a result, the areas that are going to get impacted by cold and snow will be Europe. We might see some snows in places that we don't often see snow, and we may also see snows in places that do see snow but don't see it very often, like in the British Isles, for example, particularly in England, in southern England, as opposed to, say, northern England and Scotland for sure, where they do get more snow than the rest. And also we're going to see an impact into Western Europe with cold air penetrating pretty far to the south. You can see where the flow is coming from here. It's coming from the North Atlantic right into Western Europe. And this is going to hold as long as the block that we have is an east-based block. And from the standpoint of the longer range models, it looks like this is going to be the case for the next week to 10 days. I'll give you a different view of this by looking at it from the perspective of the Atlantic, and you can see here what happens. You've got the block, the strong ridge that's out in the Atlantic, so you've got this cold flow that goes down into Western Europe, but meanwhile, in the eastern part of the United States, the flow is basically from the west. You do have a bit of a vortex in southeastern Canada, but it's not particularly strong, so any cold air with that stays mainly up in, say, northern New England and into southeastern Canada. Maybe the southern edge of it seeps southward for a day into the southern areas of the Northeast. But that's really about it. And the other thing is, we don't really have too many strong systems coming in from the west. They seem to be locked up along and off the west coast, at least for now. So we're going to need a bit of more of an adjustment in this overall pattern before anything of consequence is going to happen. We're going to be able to put this to bed for a little while. Certainly next week here in the east looks to be very, very calm. Here's a satellite loop from late this afternoon, and there's low pressure that's off the southeast coast of the United States, but you can see where the frontal zone with this is. It runs pretty much northeastward, way out into the Atlantic, so all of that moisture is staying way to the east and of little consequence. We do have a cold front that is swinging across the Great Lakes, and you can see the clouds there in the western lakes. That front comes through the northeast Saturday evening, won't have much with it, and behind it, a shot of colder air for Sunday. which will be in and out fast. And that was a big change, by the way, in what the models were showing a week ago, with a fairly strong shot of cold air that was going to last through, that looked like it was going to last at least several days. Well, now it's just a glancing blow, if you want to even call it that, and then it moves on out, and it's done. And after that, temperatures are going to be near or a little bit above average for probably all of next week. Now, in the west, the subtropical jet has been producing and shooting moisture northward. It's gotten a bit of a break today, but we do have another cold front that's swinging eastward and southeastward off the Pacific Northwest coast, and this moisture is pulling northward, so there's likely to be some rain into the Pacific Northwest at some point. That's about the only place where we see anything of consequence happening, and even there, it's nothing on the order of a major storm or anything like that. It's just normal stuff. So why don't we look at the GFS going forward and take a look, and then I'm going to come back to what we could expect in Europe. So here's our friendly neighborhood GFS, and the European model actually was maybe a little bit colder than the GFS was, but it still has the same idea here, where there's that system off the southeast. You can see what the action in the Pacific Northwest as we go through the weekend and into next week, but much of the country just very quiet. Looks like some snows move into the northern Rockies and then gradually diminish as they move southeastward. You can barely find anything as they moves into the central Rockies. Another system into the northwest for the Tuesday time frame. In the east, it's just high pressure with a weak cold front that comes through on Wednesday. Not much behind that. And then as we move through the rest of next week and beyond, some moisture drops down into Texas. A stronger front to some degree approaches on Friday in the Northeast, but even here the models have backed off on showing any kind of significant rain or snow with that. And then next weekend looks very quiet. Looks like the whole nation, except for a few pockets of moisture here and there, it's going to be on the silent side. So we may have to wait until maybe the second week in December, and some of the longer range models are indicating a change for that particular time frame. Now, let's look at what's going to be going on across the pond in Europe here, because we do have colder air, and I'll show you the temperatures as far as the above normal, below normal, and you'll notice that at least starting with today, much of Europe is above normal, but in England and Ireland it is below normal, and going forward, that below normal air gradually takes over the entire continent as we move into and through next week. You see the increasing area of below average temperatures through all of Europe, and particularly in the British Isles. Isles. A little bit too much pie yesterday. But here we go. Right through the 2-week time frame. It's only as we get toward the end of the period that it starts to warm up in parts of Western Europe. Now, this might be a sign at this point, when we get to, say, days 11, 12, and beyond, that the block, the eastern part of the eastern-based block, is breaking down somewhat and perhaps being replaced by a more western-based block, and that would favor colder weather in the eastern part of the United States. Now, looking at snowfall, why don't we look at the snowfall that the GFS at least, and I'm a little bit, actually more than a little bit, I'm a lot inexperienced in how models handle things across Europe with this, but you can see the snow as we move through the weekend and into next week. There's a gradual increase in accumulating snow across much of Western Europe and over England and Scotland, and even through most of Northern Ireland, and even through parts of Southern Ireland showing some snow. And if you want to look at this from the standpoint of actual 2-meter temperatures, for those of you who are watching, you can go to, here's Saturday. These are afternoon temperatures on Saturday, running fairly chilly, 30s and low 40s. And Sunday, and then into Monday, and now we're into Wednesday. And you can see as we go through next week, the daytime temperatures are pretty chilly here, running below 0 Celsius over a good chunk of Western Europe and over England. A lot of places here are showing daytime readings of -3, -4 Celsius, which would be temperatures in the 20s. So that's pretty cold. And moving on to the first week of December, you start to eventually get a little bit of moderation as, again, at this point, the eastern-based block is probably beginning to break down. Snow-wise in the United States, we'll give you a view on that. And there we go. Here's our 10-day snowfall in the U.S. according to the GFS. And really not too much except for the northern and central Rockies and in the west where we've been seeing it in the northwest. That continues over a good chunk of that area, but much of the plains, the Great Lakes, and the Northeast, except for the northernmost areas of the Northeast, see very, very little. And in terms of actual measured precipitation during that time frame, this is over 10 days. A lot of the country is very dry with less than a half inch. In fact, I would venture to say that a lot of the country is seeing less than a quarter of an inch of rain. The exceptions being California, where we've got some pockets of 2-inch or more amounts being indicated, and up in northwestern Washington, where there are some significant rainfall amounts spread out over the next 10 days on the order of 4 or 5 inches or more. But really, that's about it. It is an absolute snooze fest here as far as the weather is concerned. And, you know, for those of you who are the big snow lovers in the group, let me just say that none of this really has any bearing one way or the other, I believe, in terms of what kind of weather that we can expect going forward beyond, speculating in a reasonable time frame. We are not even into December yet. The pattern can certainly flip on a dime. I've seen that happen many, many times, where you think, we've been stuck in, all kinds of different patterns going along the way, and you wind up suddenly, going into a stormy pattern. So I think for you snow lovers and cold weather lovers, patience is going to be something that you might find useful, at least for a little while. So let me just say hi to those of you who are here today. Many of you, I'm sure, are out doing shopping, which is not a bad idea. Ruin Nation, Turok, Delvin, Kevin Francis, Zachary Grybos, Robert Hurley, James NASCAR, Danilo, David Fuller. Hope all of you on board have had a great Thanksgiving. And yes, Ruin Nation, food comas, I'm sure, are very, very common. Also, hi to Delvin. I missed the top of this, and Dio. So I got everybody here today. That's a good thing. So, really, try, don't come to any conclusions regarding where the weather pattern is going in the long term. There really are no guarantees, and there's no magic formula to say that, the pattern that we have is a guarantee of the pattern going forward. I've seen a lot of stuff pointing out to, combinations of the very, very warm October with an average November and what kind of winters you wind up with after that. But I think there are just too many keys to the atmospheric puzzle, and you don't have, the data bank in terms of years. You don't want to make a forecast based on a handful of decisions, especially, when you don't have, results that are 100%. So you just kind of have to wait to see what's going to happen with this block. The block is in a spot now where it does not favor cold air coming into the United States. William Huber is in the Catskills. You might get some snow showers Saturday night into Sunday morning up your way. Not impossible. And Turok hit 60 degrees in south central Minnesota. Yeah, this pattern is going to be warm, mild for much of next week throughout much of the country. I was looking at some of the longer range models. In fact, why don't I do that? We can take a look at one of the climate models, and I'll show you what they have, because the climate models actually are forecasting things to change. I'm going to put myself in the corner here, okay? Hope everybody can see all right. And let me bring up the climate model. And these are weekly models in terms of temperature forecasts. So you can see the date above. This is from the 24th, which is today, until the 1st of December, which is next Friday. And you can see that temperatures averaging well above normal out in the Rockies and Plains, above normal in the east. Much of the whole country is pretty much above average. And then as we move into the week period that follows, December 1st through December 8th, you start to see below average temperatures in the west and above in the east. Now, this could be an indication that there will be some kind of trough in the west and some kind of ridge in the east. It's not crazy above average, but it's somewhat above average. And again, that's spread out over, that's the average over the 8-day period. It doesn't necessarily mean that every single day will be above average. It could be front end loaded, perhaps. Maybe it'll be much above average for the first 3 or 4 days, and then go back down to average after that. But when we go one period further, which it's not letting me do. Okay, so here's the period before. Okay, I guess this is because they just started the new run, so I'm going to go back a run. So here's the week of the December 8th to the 15th. So you start to see below average temperatures start to show up in the east, particularly south of 40 degrees north, higher than average temperatures out in the west and into southwestern Canada. So that is indicative of perhaps a ridge that's building there. And then as we move into the 15th to the 22nd, much of the east is near average or a little bit below average, with above average out in the west. And this is going into Christmas, where it's colder than average across much of the southern half of Canada, into the northern areas of the northeast, and then near average through the southern lakes and southern areas of the northeast. And here we go into the end of December, beginning of January, and the below average temperatures start to really take over a good portion of the country. That's one climate model that's showing this, folks. Not all of them are doing that, but if you're a cold weather fan, you might take solace in the CSV model, CFSV. I'm not sure what that stands for, but if you like cold weather, you might take some solace in that. Eric Berman, you're watching from Sweden. You're going to get cold up there with this pattern that's setting up for later next week and beyond. And yes, David Fuller, I did have enough to eat. And James Trumbull just joined, so hello to you guys. So, there again, with the absence of any real storm around, it's very, it's very hard to find things to talk about. I guess the best thing to do is just enjoy the nice, quiet weather while we have it. And we will, of course, I'm going to be watching with interest what happens with the cold air on the European side of the equation over the next week to 10 days. This is new to me to be paying attention to it on a daily basis. So I will be definitely picking up some new skills through all of this. And Christopher, how do I think about of Southern New England will have their first snow by Christmas? Well, you're not going to get it next week, that's for sure. And you're probably going to need another week to repair the pattern, Christopher. So a lot of the long-range climate models, some of them are bullish for colder, snowier weather from the middle of December on. So if those models are right, I think you have a shot. The block. We've been seeing this with the block by the last couple of weeks as we've been watching it evolve, how difficult it is, and how models have a real difficult time with it because of the fact that the blocks are so unstable. in terms of their strength, in terms of their position. And position of the block means everything in terms of what the final outcome is. And right now, it doesn't favor cold air. Even the cold shot that we're getting here for Sunday, remember back a week ago, models were having it last for 3 or 4 days, and instead it's just going to be a quick shot in and out, just like, except for that one shot of cold air we had a few weeks ago, which broke records. This one is going to be pretty tame and pretty reasonable overall. All right, folks, let's continue your Thanksgiving, your post-Thanksgiving recovery. If you want to do some Christmas shopping, you can do it on the Joe Stradamus store. You'll find a link of that on my website, meteorologistjoecioffi.com. And by the way, on the top of the YouTube page, on my channel page, on the where the big banner is, the big picture of me, you have links there to my Facebook page, Twitter, Google Plus, and my website. So you can go to all of those things from there fairly easily. Also, usually if you watch this video later on, there's cards, and there's also that come up with the links, and also there are links at the end of the video that you can take advantage of. So I hope everybody had a very good Thanksgiving. I hope it's been a safe one for you, and hopefully it will continue to be through the weekend. And we will see you tomorrow, and hopefully we'll have some things to report as far as where the pattern is going to be going as we head toward the end of November. It's amazing how quick it's come. All right, folks, have a great day. Bye.